Welcome to the EnhancedGrid Quick Start tutorial for the Unity game engine. EnhancedGrid is a powerful UI layout plugin that allows you to visualize your data in 1 or 2 dimensions. Additionally, it optionally utilizes recycling and object pooling to give your project the performance boost it deserves. In this tutorial, we are going to go through setting up a scene using EnhancedGrid to display some data. Let's start with an empty Unity scene with the EnhancedGrid plugin installed in your project. EnhancedGrid is an MVC solution, which stands for Model, View, Controller. Our controller will handle setting up the data, which is also known as the model, and respond to requests from the EnhancedGrid, which is our view. We will begin by creating a folder for our scripts, and then create 3 C# files, one each for the model, view, and controller. Let's open the model script first, creating a simple class that stores a single float value. We'll then create a view class, which will be our script for the cells in our grid. This class needs to implement the EnhancedGrid cell interface. A helper class is set up called Basic Grid Cell that does a lot of the boilerplate code for you, so let's inherit from this class. The cell will only have a single label in it, so we'll set up a pointer to this UI element. We will create a public method that allows our controller to update the cell when the grid requests it to. This method will set the text field of the label to the float value of our model. Now let's create our controller script. The controller is a delegate for the EnhancedGrid, so it will need to implement the EnhancedGrid delegate interface. We will set up 2 public links, one for the EnhancedGrid in our scene, and one for a prefab that will be used to instantiate new cell view objects. We will also need to set up an internal dataset so that the controller can respond to the grid's requests with our model data. In the awake method of our script, we will set the application's target frame rate to 60, which helps give a more smooth scrolling effect. In the start method, we will create our model dataset, populating it with new model objects, setting the float values to a random number between 0 and 100. Note that you can store your model in any format you desire: one-dimensional, two-dimensional, complex JSON structures, etc. Just note that EnhancedGrid expects the data in a serialized one-dimensional format in order to have flexibility in the flow layout, so if you are storing your data in any other format, then you will need to be able to translate a one-dimensional data index to your dataset structure. In this example, we are using a one-dimensional list, so we will not need to translate the data index. Before we can use the grid, we will need to initialize it, passing this script as the delegate the grid will call upon. Finally, we tell the grid to recalculate, which will cause it to create layouts for each of our cells. In the getCellCountDelegate method, we will tell our grid how many cells it needs to create. For this example, this will be the number of elements in our model list. In the getCellPrefabDelegate method, we will tell the grid what prefab to use to instantiate cell objects. This example uses only one type of cell, so we will just pass back the reference to the cell prefab linked above. The getCellPropertiesDelegate method tells the grid a particular cell's size and expansion method. For this example, all our cells will have the same fixed size. Finally, in the updateCellDelegate method, we will cast the cell that EnhancedGrid gives us to our custom cell view class and then call that class's updateCell method, passing the model data for the data index of the cell. Note that you can do anything you wish in this method to inform your cells that they need to update. We just happen to have named our views method updateCell like the delegate method in the controller, but that name is not required. Back in the Unity editor, create a new scroll view element and attach the EnhancedGrid component. We will keep most of our properties as their defaults, but let's set the spacing and padding to give a little room for our cells. Cell spacing is between cells in the same group, which is either a column or a row depending on your flow direction. Group spacing is the gap between rows or columns. Now let's create an empty game object for our controller. Drag the controller script to this object to attach the component. Drag the scroll view to the grid property in the controller's inspector, linking our grid to the controller. Create a new UI element for our cell view. In this example, our cell will consist of a panel with a child label. Drag the view script to the cell object, linking the label property in the inspector to the child label. Drag the object to the project folder to create a new prefab. Finally, delete the object from the hierarchy since the grid will instantiate these at runtime. Link the cell prefab from the project folder to the cell prefab inspector property of the controller. Let's move the scroll view in the scene so that it fills up more of the screen. Click the play button and watch the grid create and display our cells. Let's change how the grid wraps cells so that we get a two-dimensional layout. Change the grid's wrap mode to cell count and set the wrap cell count to 3. This will give us 3 cells per row, giving a nice two-dimensional layout. I hope you found this quick start tutorial informative. For more information on how to use EnhancedGrid, please refer to the user manual, API documentation, demos, and examples. Happy coding!